I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening and welcome you to our sixth annual SPM Human Resources panel. SPM has actually been hosting this event since 2015, if you can believe it. And I'm very excited that we haven't let COVID stop us from hosting it again virtually for you this year. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marielle Tyler Von Rangel, and I'm the Assistant Director of Industry Engagement here at SPM. I've been fortunate enough to be with the program for about 2.5 years now. In my role, I manage our industry connections and provide general career services to our students. Prior to my time with the U of O, I spent several years in various HR roles, and I also have a master's in international human resources management. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the SPM program, I know we may have a few newcomers joining us tonight via live stream. Our mission is to build leaders in the sports product management industry. And I know I might be a little biased, but I think we've done a pretty fantastic job, as you'll soon see when our students introduce themselves. Just to give you a little background, the purpose of this event has always been to provide HR insight into the industry. This year, we've switched up the format just a little bit. And instead of having a moderator pose questions to our panelists, we're going to have some of our students participate and ask questions surrounding 6 different topics that they're going to introduce to you. The students actually chose the topics and formulated the questions as a group. So enough from me. I'd like to give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves, starting with one of our veteran panelists who actually participated in last year's event, Andy Shearer. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey guys, my name's Andy Shearer. I'm stoked to be here, stoked to have someone to talk to be honest, at this point in the COVID-ness. Right now, I head up the recruiting efforts at Keen Footwear and Chrome Industries, and they're actually part of that. To that, I was working.
I think you might have muted yourself, Andy. Oh,
no, I wonder if it's I've got some spotty internet connection here, which I didn't realize until I have to work from home every day. So you'll have to somehow let me know if I'm frozen, and I'll try and remember where I froze at. But I was heading up recruiting at Adidas, doing design and innovation recruiting, also marketing and sales there. And previously spent some time at Nike as well. So this is a space that I'm really passionate about, really interested in, and happy to answer any questions you guys might have as you're looking to enter the industry and into your career.
Thanks, Andy. The next person we're going to hear from is Audra Boyd. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I am excited to be here. My name's Audra. I actually am one of the recruiters for Benchmade Knife Company. I have worked there for almost 2 years, and prior to that, I was recruiter for ADEX, so in the manufacturing world still. Before that, I graduated with my master's in human resources management in 2016. So I'm still fairly new to the workforce as well. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Audra. So next person I want to hear from is Daniel. Daniel, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm Dan Benson. I manage the talent acquisition team here at New Balance. I've been with the brand now for 17 years. So 17 years ago, I came in as a contract recruiter to fill in for maternity leave for 3 months. And here I am 17 years later. So it's been a great ride, and an organization I've always been very proud to be part of. We're based in, our global headquarters is based in Boston.
Thanks, Dan. So last participant that we have, but certainly not least, is Bjorn Anderson. He's actually taking Kylie Penn's place this evening. She couldn't join us, but we're so lucky to have him. Bjorn, can you introduce yourself?
I sure can. I'll tell you what, it is good to see a couple familiar faces. Andy, how are you doing, buddy, man? It is so good to see you. For those that don't know me, Bjorn Anderson, work at Nike. Man, I've been there for a little over 10 years now. Funny enough, Andy and I used to work in this broom closet in one of the buildings that as contractors, ETWs to start. So, very humble moments, into the industry. And Shelly Gourlay, fantastic. One of my first managers when I came in, she's fantastic, knows the industry in and out, really dialed. So I was happy to be here. Obviously, this is a really interesting time. I can only imagine. So I went to the University of Washington. I don't know if you guys know about those Huskies, but I was tempted to put the UW background, but I held off, But I think this is a really interesting time, I think, for everyone because, we're all trying to kind of evolve and change the way that we interact in our personal lives, but also in professionally. And so the interesting thing is like, we're all on the same level right now. We've never been in this spot where everyone's on the same page. It's like everyone's got to reinvent themselves. So I think we're in a really unique time and space. And thank you for letting me join.
Thank you for joining, and thanks for joining us last minute. We're super excited to have you. So that is our panelist introduction. We're now going to get started with our student questions. Rachel, first student panelist question, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you, and thank you everyone joining us. I really appreciate your time. So my name's Rachel. I'm in the class of 21. The next few questions will be specifically about recruiting. So I'll go ahead and direct this first question to Audra. So Audra, would you be able to take us through the hiring process for a PLM and product development role, from the initial posting to hiring?
So at Benchmade, we do not have a whole lot of product line managers, but we have, of course, a product development team and some product or PLMs. When we know that we're going to hire for that, the very first thing I do is I meet with the hiring manager. So I sit down, I do an intake, make sure that I know exactly what they're looking for. If we're looking for someone who has more experience or maybe not as much experience. And then from there, I will go and post. I always say we do not like to just post and pray. So for us, it's huge to have our sourcing strategy. So the very first thing I do post, but to multiple job boards, but I reach out to my personal network. I reach out to people that I might know who might know people who might be a fit for this role. After that, I will, once we start getting candidates from that we sourced and that applied, I will start doing phone screens. I'll connect with the hiring manager, do a lot of different phone screens, connect with the hiring manager after that, pass my notes over to them. And then from there, we actually do assessments. So we do a personality assessment, we do an aptitude assessment. And then if that all goes well, we do an on-site interview. Of course, it's different times right now with COVID, but typically we would do an on-site interview. And this would be with people directly on that team. So we do that. And if that goes well, we'll do a cross-functional interview. This is a position in the company that works with so many different people around the organization. So they will be meeting with them. And then if that goes well, we do kind of a project presentation. This could be anywhere from, we give them maybe something that's going on, maybe in something with our knives that we want them to look deeper into. So maybe talking about long-term strategy, market trend, market and customer research. So a lot of different things. It's different every time, but it's always that project and presentation, and they'll present that to the team. And then after that, we do debriefs with the entire panel, and then we go to offer. So it's kind of a lengthy process, but we want to make sure that we're hiring the right candidate for the role, and then obviously that the role is the right fit for the candidate too. So.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that answer. I'll go ahead and pass it to Jacob for the next question.
Thanks, Rachel, and thank you, Audra. My name's Jacob. I'm in the class of 21 as well. And Andy, I have a question for you. So if I didn't get hired, or say I didn't get hired, what's the best method for asking for interview feedback in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and there's so much going into this dynamic. So you've got the net connection is not stable apparently. Let me know if I cut out. Um, there's the candidate who some candidates don't like getting feedback and they struggle with getting it, all the way through to candidates that will take the feedback well, and they are very pragmatic and they take it with grace, and they hopefully that informs their performance for the next time around. All the way through to we have some candidates that once they get the feedback, they get quite defensive and they can get a little bit cranky with the feedback, and that can set off a whole sort of new can of worms as well. So that's the candidate dynamic at play. The recruiter, I think, is always wanting to provide feedback so that the candidate can interview better next time. Sometimes the recruiter doesn't get all of the feedback from the hiring manager. Sometimes the feedback is vague. Sometimes it's objective. Sometimes it's subjective. Sometimes it's feedback that, to be blunt, it's tough to share that feedback with a candidate. It may be incredibly biased, and it may be it might be off point as well. And so there's a bit of a filter role that the recruiter plays there as well. The hiring manager may not be trained in interviewing. They may not be trained in giving constructive feedback, and they may not be able to provide feedback in a way that you can digest it and it can improve your form for next time as well. So there's a lot that goes in there. My advice is to just try and get something that's useful out of the feedback, and you may not get the complete story there, or maybe early on in the conversation with the recruiter, prepare that recruiter that you will, however it plays out, you're interested in getting that feedback. And that will prime the process all the way along so that the recruiter's keeping an eye out and keeping an ear out for feedback. And we can also preempt things with the hiring manager to make sure that, hey, look, we need to get some specific feedback. So that could be a useful approach. You can also make it simple for the recruiter and just say, hey, look, if there was one thing that I need to work on for next time, what would that be? And that kind of sets the bar a little lower for some recruiters. I think some recruiters are more comfortable giving feedback than others. And I think that you need to somehow win that trust of the recruiter that you're going to take it within the right spirit, that you're not going to react to get defensive, or that you're not going to, take it, in a tearful way, right? That you're going to take it in a really, really positive way. So if you can prime that from the start, and then if you can keep on looking for those ways of getting some feedback along the process, I think that can be really useful. The other thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes there's nothing in it. Sometimes it's you just get pipped at the post, and so that feedback that you're getting needs to be weighted in that way, in that you were just a hair away from getting the job. And in that instance, that feedback is really difficult to word. If there's lots of reasons why you missed out on getting the job, then obviously there's a lot of things that you can go into. But sometimes, and more often than not, and certainly when you're early in your career and there's not a lot to work with, it really is maybe just a gut read by the hiring manager. It's chemistry in the room. There's a lot of things that can, that getting good feedback or not won't necessarily explain the big picture for you. Does that help you out, Jacob?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, okay.
Great. Okay, I'm going to pass it back to Rachel. She's got one more question.
Awesome, thank you. We're going to go back to Audra for this question. So the industry has a history of hiring based on who you know. It's all about the network. Do you see this as still being the status quo? And then also the second part to that question is, how is the industry, in your eyes, transitioning to more of what you know rather than who you know?
No, that's a really good question. And that was a really good answer too, Andy. So good job. So for that, I actually, just so everyone knows, I actually got the job at Benchmade based on what I know. I did not know a single person. So I think that puts a lot of hope out there, because I know there's a lot of companies out there. It is based off who you know. And that is, I probably want to say about 70% of it. That's just my opinion. I think that you absolutely do need to network. But it is possible to get a job based off of what you know, because ultimately, if you don't know how to do the job, then you can't do it. You can know a whole bunch of people, but if you don't know how to do the job, can't do it. So I would say network a lot. I always tell people, dig your well before you're thirsty. So definitely network before there's a job posted. Reach out to if your dream job is to work for Benchmade or Nike or New Balance or whatever, make sure to reach out to the recruiters, reach out to the hiring managers, connect with them on LinkedIn, go to networking events, do everything you can if that's your dream company to work for. Because like I said before, when I post a job, that's the first thing I do is tap into my network. So if I realize, oh gosh, Rachel reached out to me not too long ago, I'll remember your name, I'll remember your resume. So I think that who you know, I would say it's still probably the status quo. That's just my opinion, but you can't, again, get the job without what you know. I also think that it is easier to know somebody because they could speak to that, how that person is and whatnot. But at the same time, if you don't know anybody, there is that possibility, or you're still able to get the job, but you need to maybe hustle a little bit more. So when you are reaching out, or when you're tailoring your resume to each job that you're applying to, or your cover letter, make sure to really show that excitement and that passion that you really want to work for that company. Figure out a way that could make you stand out amongst those other candidates. We get so many applications, probably not as many as Benchmade as like the Nikes of the world, but we still get quite a lot. So what's going to make you stand out? And so tailor your resume and your cover letter as much as you possibly can. And reach out to the recruiter too on LinkedIn at the same time when you do apply. So hopefully that answers your question, but I don't think it's necessarily transitioning one way or the other. I think that it's always going to be a little bit of both. I think that it's still always super important to know people and to network. I don't think, my opinion, that that's ever going to change, but you obviously still need to know how to do the job. So yeah.
Well, that was a great answer. Thank you very much.
Before we move on to the next, I just wanted to quickly say thank you, Audra, for telling all of the students what I've been telling them for the last, how many months has it been, guys? So I appreciate you saying that. And also, just a quick side note, Audra actually got a lot of LinkedIn messages from me before any of this, and we've actually never met in person. So just like a quick side note to all of you, that she's joined the panel tonight because I was networking with her for, I don't know, probably like the last year or something like that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right, next question, guys.
Okay, well, that's a great transition, because my next question has to is about getting a response from recruiters like you, Audra. So another follow-up question for you is, how do we get a response from recruiters, say on LinkedIn? And how do you, as a recruiter, decide on if you're going to respond or how you're going to respond?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jacob. That's a really good question too. And I know a lot of people always ask me that. And I will tell you, as a recruiter, or probably anybody in HR, we get a ton of LinkedIn messages every day. And I love responding to people. I just love connecting with people. So I do my very best to respond to everyone. But being that we get a lot, I always tell people, make it short, sweet, and to the point. Sometimes when I'm, sitting in my office and I have all these other things to do, and then I get this LinkedIn message that's like this big, I'm like, oh gosh, I really want to read this, but I have to get to this other stuff. And then I'll forget about it. And then I'll feel bad because I might not respond. So make it short, sweet, and to the point. one of the things that I tell people is make kind of like a bulleted list, if you will. So maybe, how many years of experience you have, your name, you're really interested in a PLM role at Benchmade. Show some excitement behind it. This is my dream company that I want to work for. I've been waiting for this position or whatever. And then the first 5 typically bullet points in a job description are typically the most kind of the non-negotiables. Those are what we need for that role. So usually look at those first 5 bullet points. And if you have something in there, make that kind of your tagline in the message that you send the recruiter. I have X, Y, and Z, which is needed for a PLM role. And then what that does for me is I'm like, oh gosh, look at Jacob. He has this many years of experience. He has these first at least 3 out of the 5 of the bullet points. He might be a great fit for this role. Let me actually go to my applicant tracking system and pass his resume over to the hiring manager. So it makes you stand out. It's short, sweet, to the point. I could look at it real quick. The other thing too is typically when there is a job that's posted, I get a lot of people who might apply but not message me on LinkedIn, but they might message me on LinkedIn and not apply. And I feel like it's great to do both. If you message me on LinkedIn and you don't apply, now I don't have your resume. I can't easily pass you over to my hiring manager. So definitely do both. Don't be afraid to showcase who you are. Don't be afraid to reach out to recruiters. There might be some recruiters that don't respond. It's okay to follow up too. Like I said, I know everyone's really busy, so it's totally okay to follow up. And get creative in how you want to do it. Make yourself, like I said before, stand out. Just so you guys know, a lot of companies now use AI for their applicant tracking system. And it's because they get so many applicants that there's AI that just goes through all of the resumes for the recruiter before it even gets to the recruiter. We personally don't use that, but with that being said, sometimes maybe your resume might get pushed out by AI. So make sure to message the recruiter on LinkedIn. And if they respond, great, but don't be afraid to do both. So hopefully that answers your question, Jacob.
That was super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm going to hand it over to Maddie now for the next question.
All right. So this question is for Bjorn. So since you kind of filled in last minute, we wanted to see how familiar you were with the SPM program and how it prepares the students for the industry.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great question. I'll be honest. I know this program is a couple years old? Is that about right?
About 5.
Having been at Nike for 10 years, I'll tell you a fun story. I remember when this was kicking off, there was a feeling, and Andy, you may be able to kind of validate this a little bit. We knew that this program was going to be big time, right? This program is like going through an internship before your internship. Like, this is teaching you all like the industry secrets, like all the shit that you would actually learn as an employee going in, but giving you that early heads up on how you operate, how you work with people. I remember there was some moments where Nike obviously has a rich relationship with Oregon, right? And Adidas was real hot on this program. Like, they were like, we know how important this program is, because why not? You've got the usual suspects here in the area from Nike, Columbia Sportswear, Adi, Mizuno. I mean, you go down the line, it's a big group of folks that are here in Portland. Then you also have Wine & Kennedy, RGA, AKQA, Blast Radius, all the great, partners that we all work with. And so this program that you guys are going through is prepping you in the way that you would hope to get prepped for not having this program going into an internship. So you guys already have a little bit of like an edge, because you're in the state that has like some of the best product, sports marketing brand. Like, it's a very lucky program. And I think this is like one of those opportunities for folks that if you're in this program, it's very well recognized. And so I think Although for you guys going into the classes, like going through the curriculum, all this stuff, like this is prepping you for like real life opportunity. It's just kind of funny because when I was talking with Kylie, she's my boss who couldn't make it here today, and we were just kind of laughing because we remember when it started kicking off, we were like, man, there was like a lot of our traditional competitors that knew how big this program was going to be before it started kicking off, and we're at this point right now. But that's where I kind of have to laugh a little bit because it's all good competition, but at the end of the day, you guys are setting yourself apart from any other university. Could anyone tell me right now there's another university that does it better than you guys do and is cranking out talent that understands what selling product and brand and experience is really truly like? It's tough. It's really tough. So, man, you guys are in a fantastic spot. Take it seriously, because it's not necessarily like the program that's going to make you successful. The program's going to set you up for success. It's all about how you take all that information, and it's your work ethic, it's your grit and your vulnerability that's going to take you to that next level. So hopefully, sorry, I've been on a lot of like Zoom calls and like a lot of late night India calls with my Nike fans. So yeah.
That's awesome. I'm really motivated now.
If I can just add on top of what Bjorn was saying, and one of the earlier conversations or questions was around who you know in the industry and how that seems to be the slippery slope into the job of your dreams. You guys all know each other. Like this network, this crew that you guys all have right now is the network that will really be the point of leverage into the industry. So be cool with each other, because I think that's the big pot of gold.
Yeah, absolutely. I think nailed it on the head. And someone else had mentioned it is Aubrey.
Audra. Yeah. Had to unmute.
But you nailed it. It was like, yeah, it is about, who you know sometimes, but once you get in the door, it's up to you to grind, so you're representing the person that got you in the door. So hopefully you make them look good, but it's not about who you know, because you can get in, but if you suck and you don't have the work ethic and you don't have like that grit and that like fire in your belly, then all of a sudden you're disappointing not only just the person that like put their neck out for you, but yourself. And so I think don't take it for granted. Like having that, a little bit of an edge is fantastic, but trust your own gut and like what you're able to bring. That's the biggest thing. They complement each other. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. So kind of building off of that, it sounds like you know a lot of what we do in the program and the courses that we go through. So if you could see one way that the UO and SPM program could bolster the overall program to help us be more attractive to companies, is there anything you see that we could improve on?
Oh man, honestly, I think it's up to you guys. You guys represent the program. The program helps you guys get to the point where you're at, and hopefully, you're ready to go. If you look at any, like, I'm gonna give you a quick analogy, right? If you go to a top, like let's say Alabama, Alabama's a great program, but they're a great program because they bring in good people and they bring in good players. And so I think the same thing kind of applies. Is it's up to you guys to make the program successful, as well as like the energy they're putting into you, because they're setting you guys up with all sorts of fantastic information and connection points and industry insights that no other university or special program really has. And so it's a very unique opportunity. And I think the program will always evolve. If the program's not evolving, then that's unfortunate. But I have faith, and this is tough for me to say as a Husky, but like I have faith in University of Oregon's program because they know what it takes to be the best in what they do. And so I think there's a paired relationship where, it can't be one failing the other. You both have to live up to your responsibilities. And that's where it's going to excel. I can tell you that like we're all watching. We're all watching. We're up here and like I'm in beautiful Beaverton, Oregon, coming to you live, and we're all going through this COVID shit, but like we're all watching you guys right now. Like Andy, like the rest, like everyone, like we're watching how you guys act and how you are just resilient to everything that's going on. Continue to do, you know, put the work in, because you put the work in, it's going to pay off. And you have a great program. So it's a little bit of a tangent, but hopefully, yeah, a little bit of some nuggets in there.
Yeah, that was awesome. Great. Thank you. So I'm going to pass it to Ashley now.
Okay, so I have two questions for Andy, kind of regarding how to shine within the application process. The first question is, what are some great ways to show your hard and soft skills on paper?
Yeah, so I think there's a few different ways that you can show that soft side or add a little bit more color to your application. I think that on your resume, if you're able to add at least, so I work for Keen Footwear, and Keen is very values based. So we do a lot of work to try and protect the environment and break down some of the barriers to getting outside and getting amongst it. And so we always look for people who are very charitable, who try and give back in different ways or support the community in different ways. And so just very basically, I think that would be a good thing to start listing on your resume. Outside of that, I think that there's some really interesting things that you can do around social media. Social media is something that I think typically is seen as usually a negative force on your application, and that, you know, there is potentially some truth there. You know, I think a lot of employers, a lot of hiring managers will go and do some digging around the internet, and it's you know, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but they do it anyway. But I think that what you can do is actually create some professional social media sites, maybe on Instagram, or and it's you can use that that platform, I guess, as a way of showing another side to you, showing that you're connected to culture, showing where your passions are, showing like what really blows your hair back, because those are the things that can help to take you from just a straight up black and white resume to all of a sudden there's a little bit more, and as a recruiter, I think you start getting a little bit more curious about that person. You start forming a connection with that person. So even if you have two Instagram pages, and one is like what you normally roll with, and then the other one is the one that you put on your resume and you put on your LinkedIn page, that can really help. It can just help to provide a little bit more context to who you are as a person. I think that you know, at this stage in your career, just getting as many experiences as possible, that you can start cross-referencing on your LinkedIn and cross-referencing on your resume. I think that can help, and it can just give you more depth and more richness as a candidate than someone else that's fresh out of school and may not have so many experiences that they can list.
Awesome, thank you. And the follow-up question is, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but a resume and cover letter are mandatory, as we know. But how do we go above and beyond and separate ourselves without doing too much?
Yeah, that's a great question. So resumes are standard. Cover letters, I feel like half the recruiters I talk to are into cover letters and the other half aren't. So don't put all of your eggs in that basket. I'd keep your cover letter just really short, really punchy, and that's an opportunity, I think, in your cover letter to really just touch on maybe the 4 top points why you're the right fit for that role. And when you're doing that, if you're looking through the job description online, the job posting online, and you pick out some key themes or references in there, those are the things that you really need to highlight in your cover letter. In terms of going that extra mile, you know, I think that there's always I think there's always ways that you can show that you're always working, always designing, always creating, always thinking. And whether you're setting up your own little test projects on the side, or it could even be reaching out to some people who work at some of the brands that you're targeting and saying, hey, look, you know, I'm a student, or I'm a recent grad. I've got a bit of time on my hands. Are there any research projects that you'd be curious for me to tackle, you know? And that would be a way of starting that conversation. You know, everyone is reachable and contactable through LinkedIn, but that challenge is getting a response or a reply. And if you can somehow make that connection, make that offer to do some research or to do a bit of a project, then you can start that dialogue with someone that can be a leverage point into an organization you're targeting.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. I'm going to hand it over to Milena now.
No worries.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melina Sanchez. I'm part of the class of 2021. And my first question is for Bjorn. How are you as a recruiter using professional social media like LinkedIn?
Oh, man. So I normally have, funny enough, I normally have LinkedIn pulled up every day, like whether I'm using it to source people. It's a really interesting, so I think LinkedIn's like changed a bit. Like it went from, it's all about, you know, just content around people trying to get jobs, but now I actually see it as like a really great tool for like breaking news and, you know, things that are actually relevant. I think the technology behind that is you have to think about the people you're connecting to, the stories you're liking. Everything's an algorithm behind the scenes to tailor that experience to what they want you to enjoy. And so I think that's why it's important to curate kind of not only just like what you're doing on LinkedIn, but the connections you make. Like I don't necessarily connect with everybody. I connect with a lot of people, but it's all tied into those like, you know, nerdy algorithms where they want to kind of supply content to you. And so I have it up all the time. Like there's just a ton of stuff that people post. It's almost like a beautiful RSS feed for what's going on in the industry. Like, and I think that's what it's turned into, something just kind of in its own realm. And so I think honestly, yeah, I have it up all the time. I think it's a great way to do research on other folks. I think it's an important reason to keep your brand and your profile like up to date, because everyone's kind of like looking at one another in a weird way. But I think from a trends and insights and that kind of stuff, it's beautiful. It's going to feed you what you're putting into it. And so I think, don't think of it as in like, oh, I'm using LinkedIn just to make network connections. LinkedIn is like linking you into what's going on in the industry. So it, you know, it's fantastic. I don't know. I have it up, you know, to research on someone or just to see what news is coming through, find out what weird people are doing and like it and just interact. But also too, I think now it's become more of like almost an RSS feed for news in the industry versus like just a networking platform for folks to get jobs.
Awesome.
I want to take a second because we're a little ahead of schedule for once. This is pretty exciting. Can we get some other answers from our other panelists on this question? I feel like this is a pretty relevant question right now. So maybe Audra, Andy, Dan, you guys can tell us how you use it as well.
Dan, over to you, mate. I've forgotten what your voice sounds like.
Oh, hey. So we use, thank you. You know, LinkedIn's been a very powerful tool for us, right, from sourcing candidates. But also, I think it's done a phenomenal job in really bringing our brand to life and putting us in consideration with candidates that maybe never thought about us, right, as an employer of choice, whether it's in the Boston area or within the industry, right? So we've scaled back a little bit in the last couple of months, but we've always been focused, you know, cadence around telling brand stories, product stories, the work that we're doing in our communities, and then also highlighting, profiling our associates as well. So the number of times I get on the phone with a candidate and they mention something that we posted on LinkedIn, right? So they've already connected, they've made that connection with the brand. I think they have a better understanding of our values and what we stand for as an organization and what our priorities are, right, in the areas of focus. So yeah, so I think it's a great tool, both from a recruiting standpoint, but also for you guys as candidates, as you think about, connecting with people within the industry, but also doing your research before reaching out.
Thank you. Audra, anything to add on your end?
Yeah, I use it probably, well, I too have it open all the time. Like it's one of my screens that I will put up in the morning every day. I don't just use it, of course, I'll source candidates and everything off of there. But I learned so much off of everything that people post on LinkedIn. I'm constantly just scrolling through the feed and I'm like, oh, what, that company is doing this? Like, that's a great idea. We need to do that here at Benchmade. So I also reach out to people. It's obviously a form of networking, but I'll reach out to other recruiters and I'll be like, hey, like, how are you guys handling this situation right now? Or just to get insights. I get a lot of insights from that, from people on LinkedIn. There's a lot of cool articles. So that's what I do. But yeah, mostly networking, sourcing, but it's an awesome thing to always have open. So I'm always going through it every day.
Thanks, guys. Belina, back to you. Sorry for the pause there.
Okay, thank you. So my next question is for Dan. What do you think to you, what are the do's and don'ts of a LinkedIn profile for this industry?
Yeah, really good question. I think important to, I think first understand what are the competencies, right, that companies are looking for as you think about the roles that you're going to be applying for, right, and making sure that you're calling that out in your LinkedIn profile. And then how do you link those soft skills, right, that drove business results, right? And I think providing those examples as you're describing your work history or some of the work that you've led, within your communities or in school, right? So I think that's really important. I think as these guys have talked about, right, I think it's a phenomenal tool to network with. I think there's a balance though, right? I think that it's important to be persistent, but I think there's the right approach. And I think, trying to connect with a hiring manager is great. Trying to connect with a recruiter, I think, is another a good approach. But try to connect with somebody who might currently be in the role, right? Or somebody that has a similar background as yourself, right? Because there's countless times that we get resumes from somebody who's on that team, right? Who says, hey, this person reached out to me on LinkedIn, had a great conversation, super impressive, would definitely recommend that you guys make the connection. So that, I think has been, and I think sometimes it's easier talking to somebody who's at that level versus talking to a hiring manager or talking to a recruiter. And I think they can really give you some good advice around what does the day-to-day responsibilities look like and what are we looking for, or what their experience was like as they went through the interview process as well.
We could have someone else answer this, if any of our panelists.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that the algorithm of LinkedIn kind of picks up on is activity. So how active you are, and so therefore how often you're changing your profile. So if you're going in and even if you're just tweaking a couple of words and just changing them around, that will all of a sudden make it look like to the algorithm that you're super active on LinkedIn, and you'll get to the top of our searches. The other thing that we do when we search on LinkedIn is that we often search on keywords. And so those keywords, if you think about it through the lens of what jobs it is that you're going for, or what jobs it is that you're doing, it would be around the software that you use. It would be around some of the tools and platforms that you use, some of the technologies. And then, if you're getting into specific categories, if it's men's, if it's women's, if it's training, if it's basketball, and so those are the sorts of keywords that we would normally search on in LinkedIn. You can get a little cheeky with that, I think, and you can start putting the keywords just in a keyword section in your at the very bottom of your resume. So if it's chronological order, below the very last job that you've had, you could just have a job that's all around keywords. I've seen people on their actual resume that they send in having a footer or a header section where they've put their keywords in white font on white paper, and the font is like 8-point font. So it's tiny, it's invisible, but the computer's picking up on those words, and you'll start getting to the top of some of those searches. So that's another cheeky way of doing it. The other thing I think is to follow the companies that you're targeting, because you will then have more information about those companies in your feed. And also when those companies are searching for people, again, the algorithm's going to kick you to the top of the list if you're already following that company. With the picture, try and keep it professional. I don't know. I feel like I've seen quite a few dating app photos on LinkedIn. And so just be really careful about that. And then have a think about in the contact details section of LinkedIn. It's everyone, it's however you feel about it, but some people put their phone numbers in there. It obviously means that you're reachable by everyone, but it means you're reachable. There's a lot of people who put their portfolio link in there, which is super useful because it's one less phone call that needs to happen. Just make sure the portfolio link is still working. And then same with, you can put your social media links in there. So like I mentioned, Ash, earlier on about having professional Instagram page, that professional Instagram page could be sitting within your contact details on LinkedIn as well. The other thing I was going to say is that LinkedIn's becoming a bit spammy. It's so easy to hit people up. And so the challenge, like I said earlier on, is like, how do you somehow make your email or your reach out so sticky and so compelling that you need to respond? And so try not to just lead with a sales pitch. Try and make it a little bit more conversational. And you don't need to get a full paragraph back. You just need to get a reply back. And then once you get a tiny little reply back, you can make it into a big reply next time.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ella. I think she has some questions for you guys.
Great, yeah. Hey, my name's Ella Verhees. Thanks for those answers. So kind of switching to a different topic around advancement within a company. This question's for Dan. How do you describe the growth and progression plan at New Balance?
Yeah, so before I answer that, one thing I would say is, as you guys start, your journey, find the right brand, right? Find the right organization, and be less focused about the title and the specific role. The number of people that we've brought in that initially wanted to come into product management and work on performance running, that just weren't ready for that role, right? And they came in to work on kids or walking, which may not be the flashiest category, where they decided to take a role in product allocation. And it was a great opportunity for them to come in and grind it out and show what they could do. And many of these people have progressed into other areas of the organization and moved into product marketing. So I always stress that, right, is don't get caught up on the title at this point, right? Don't get caught up in the category. Find the right brand, find a place where you can learn and where you feel like you can grow and develop. As I think about product marketing, over the years, it was typically associate PM, PM, senior PM, and so forth. And I think really what we've tried to do is, as we think about growing future general managers across the organization, is how do we get people outside of their expertise, right? Whether it's moving into a different category, right, or moving into a business that's struggling, or a new category that we're entering into, or a high volume category, right, that's going to give them a greater focus on financial acumen, right? And to start to understand how to manage a P&L, right? To understand how to manage a global assortment and work with the regional merchandising teams. So those are some of the things that, as we think about growth. It also, right now, as we go through this COVID thing, we furloughed a fair amount of associates, and our focus and our priorities look different than what they did 60 days ago, right? And we have people working in different capacities. And I think it's really, what we're seeing is people that are really elevating, showcasing skills that we haven't seen them exhibit in the past, right? And I think it's given them opportunities to continue to grow their skill set outside of their functional expertise. So, so it can look many different ways. And if I think about our CEO today, here's somebody who started as a senior product manager and then moved into a small business that we acquired. And then took over to lead the international business, so got that commercial experience, then moved back into product and then brand, and then moved back to the commercial side as well too. So if you look at his background, I'm not sure if those were roles that he had on his career plan, but as we thought about what we needed for someone to step in that role as a CEO, is you really need somebody with diverse experiences across the organization.
Great, thank you. I mean,
Take
if anyone
a pause and see. Sorry, Ella, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I want to take a pause and see if anybody else has anything they want to add. I think this is a pretty important question, but I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Andy, Bjorn, Audra.
And I thought that was a great answer. I don't know. I feel like often you don't really know what your next position is going to be until you kind of get to the, one step up, and then that gives you visibility on that landscape. And then you might realize, oh my God, there's a whole area over there I hadn't even thought existed, and that really specifically speaks to what I'm interested in. And so all of a sudden you can use that as a leverage point. So I think just trying to be curious and taking the landscape as you move through your career will open up sometimes lateral moves, but they'll open up the sort of moves that will get you ready for the next big one.
Yeah, I would, good point. I would say, don't say no to a lot of opportunities, right? And yeah, and I think where sometimes people get in trouble is they're more focused on their next role than actually doing their current role, right? And typically we see those people fizzle out pretty quickly. So come in and drive results in your current role. It's good to network internally, but I think over the years we've had interns that have come in and they're more focused on getting hired than actually driving results. So I think there's a balance. Obviously, you want to network, right? And you want to think about what your next role is in the organization and have a plan. But you also, you gotta get it done in your current role.
Thanks, everyone. We can pass it back to the students if Audra, unless you have something you want to add.
I mean, they touched on it really. For me, just do not be afraid to take on more things. If someone comes to me, my manager or whoever comes to me and says, hey, do you want to do something else in the organization or learn this? Don't be afraid to do that. Sometimes, like they said, you might realize that you actually really like doing something else, or your career might go in a different direction. I know a lot of times I focus on planning, like by year 5, I need to do this. And I think that sometimes we get so caught up in that, that go with what you want to do, but also take on other things. And I think your career will just kind of go, and it will go in the direction that maybe you didn't expect. So yeah, take on whatever you can and learn.
And when you're young and you're able to travel and you're not sort of, anchored to Portland, or, this is the time to be able to get those experiences that really will help. And global experience is massive because these are often global companies.
Yeah, the one other thing I would say is, and obviously this has been heightened over the last 60 days, but digital, right? So there's such a focus for our organization just around where we're investing. And some of that was, forced with COVID, but I think anything that you can do to get, to sharpen your digital skill set will be so important.
Thank you all. I think we're going to turn it over to Holly now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm Holly. I just want to ask you a little bit about diversity and equity and how your company attracts and retains talent of diverse backgrounds. Oh, and I guess we're going to start with Andy, please.
All right. Oh, man. So this is an area that I'm quite passionate about, and I've been involved at Addy and certainly at Keen as well. And I feel like the pursuit of a diverse workforce is such a journey and not a destination, because the you feel like you've gotten to a point where you feel like you've got some great balance internally, and you realize that still there's some voices that are missing from the table. And so how do you try and obviously attract more diverse individuals and then also retain them is the trick. For us at Keen, we've been partnering with organisations like Canva, which started out as really as a non-profit that was focused on getting more females into the outdoor industry, but it's expanded beyond only female talent now. And then we also work with the Native American Student Fund, and also this really cool group called Outdoor Afro. Outdoor Afro are all, there are, I think it was 32 different chapters around the US, and they're all about helping to break down some of the barriers of outdoor participation amongst Black community. And it's huge. And so from our point of view, how we've been trying to tackle that is to really get close to the communities that we want to recruit from. We're wanting to pull into the organization, and this was the same way at Adidas as well, pull into the organization the sort of cultures that we want to relate and connect with at a consumer level. And there's often been that disconnect. It's such a slow process, sadly. Part of the challenge, I think, is addressing some of the bias and unconscious bias that sits within the hiring process, even within the straight up management internally, and some of the dynamics there as well. There's a lot of intersectionality that plays across all of these fronts. Yeah. So once you start breaking down some of those barriers and some of those issues that get in the way, and then you're inviting more diverse individuals to the table, and you need to listen to what I think what they're looking for in terms of an inclusive workforce. But we're all learning, like everyone, on this topic. So it's just so important, I think, to just keep learning and I don't know, be humble with the lessons that you're learning, and be cool with just being clumsy and awkward about it, because it's an awkward topic.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up if anybody else wants to chime in on that.
I'll jump in real quick. I mean, I think the one thing that we think about is you're not going to build strong products and experiences at any company, regardless of Nike, unless you have some of those insights. Like, data and insights are super important. You can't necessarily say what's hot in New York or LA or Tokyo or Paris unless you have those insights. And I think sometimes that diversity comes in a variety of different shapes and sizes and flavors. And so I think it's thinking beyond just, all right, what do I know? Because I think a lot of it is building a balance of a fantastic team. I remember we were talking about, it's like kind of like Trivial Pursuit. You can't win that game unless you have those different color pieces in the puzzle. And so I think diversity and inclusion is so important right now, because you can't build the strongest team if you don't have unique perspectives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be on a specific topic. I think you have to have just different minds and different perspectives and unique experiences for sure to go to that next level. And so it would be super boring if I was working on a team and it was a bunch of Bjorns. Like, I would be super bored. I would be like, man, we're not going to get very far, guys, because we're going to have a lot of ADD distractions. And so I think, like, the beauty is like, you should look forward to building a diverse team, but don't think of it as in just a very singular perspective. Think about it as in, it comes in a lot of different ways, and you'll be surprised at, like, the ideas and the products and the experiences and everything that ends up coming to light when you have that feeling and you've got those different perspectives and those insights. Like, it gets exciting because all of a sudden you start building something a bit better. And I think that's the beauty of it all, is it's all about us all coming together, sharing unique perspectives, and then let's make something beautiful behind that. And even if you're not able to kind of crush something out that's just, go to market and it's going to be strong, it's that idea and that process and the flow that happens in that moment that creates the next thing. And so I think it all kind of starts having this like chemical reaction between the rest of your team. And that's when you start seeing some of the things that you've never experienced or never felt like would ever happen. So I think that's the importance of having it in the workplace, but also too personally and professionally. Like, why wouldn't I want to, work with people that have a unique experience than me? Because they're going to make me think a little bit differently, and then we're all going to create something fantastic. So that's, I think there's obviously it's a very, very important and hot topic right now. I think there's companies that are leveraging this as maybe a number for them, but I think that is so short-sighted because you don't know what you're going to create a couple years down the line sometimes. And so unless you start early and you embrace that feeling, like, you're limiting yourself, and that's unfortunate. And so I think it's very important right now, and I think it comes in, again, it just comes in a lot of different like spaces. So I think everyone needs to be very open because it's going to help build you as a better person, and we're all in it together. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're a bit ahead of schedule again, which is pretty impressive for us. We do have a question from another student that I'll kind of open up to all the panelists. Nick, you want to take it from here?
Sure. Thank you guys first for being here. I had a quick question. So kind of something that's been burning on the back of a couple of our minds is going into interviews when we graduate around next March, and kind of having to leverage this COVID topic into something practical and beneficial, because like something that's been looming for us is that unfortunately the outbreak has limited our exposure to the industry, and we haven't been able to get into the internship roles that we would have been normally able to get into. And we don't necessarily have that firsthand experience to pull out and talk about in the interview. So I guess the question is just kind of centered around like, how do I make that a topic of conversation, and how do we kind of use that to our advantage in interviews going forward?
Anyone want to take that for job?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. Nick, I think that this COVID thing is just the greatest equalizer, like Bjorn had mentioned. We're all in this new world that no one could have predicted, and no one is going to be able to predict what's going to come out of this. And so I think that just straight out, that's just a great icebreaker. I feel like everyone's got a COVID story or two. So I think that's useful, and I think that people understand that the situation and the hand that's been dealt with you guys is no fault of your own. It makes you no less a strong candidate. You might have missed out on one internship, but I think in the big scheme of things, I wouldn't put so much weight in what that one internship would have been. There's some brands that take on board interns within the first 12 months after they've finished school, and so you might be able to pick up an intern there. I think that we talk about it internally about like after this COVID thing, people are going to be asking us, what did you do as a brand? What did you do to help out your employees through COVID? What were your COVID policies? And how did you care for your employees during this period? And so we're often thinking internally, oh man, like we need to make sure that we've got some good stories. What are those stories? What are the things that we did? That's the bar or the measure that was going to be held to. But I think that by the same token, maybe one of the interview questions that you may get asked is like, all right, you didn't get an internship, and what did you do with that? You know, like like moving to like, what can you do about it? That could potentially set you apart from some of the you're competing against. Did that help you out, Nick?
It definitely
Am I
did.
frozen?
Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Sweet.
Anyone else want to respond?
I could say something to that too. It is absolutely such a weird time. It's unknown how this is going to change a lot of things, especially in the workforce. And are more people going to be remote after this? Is majority of the company is going to be remote? It's hard to say how this is going to change things, but just like Andy said, we are all aware, of course, of what's happening. And so we know that, you guys who are graduating, who I know if you guys probably are familiar with the MECOP internship for engineers, I know there's a lot of engineers who couldn't have their MECOP internship this year. And it's unfortunate, but we know that, what's happening during this time. And also kind of like what Andy said is you can do, what can you do during this time? If you can't do an internship, don't be afraid. I've gotten a lot of emails from people like, hey, my internship got canceled. Is there anything, maybe like a side project I could do? There might be some companies that might be able to have you do something little remotely, maybe part-time during this time. So you can always reach out in that way. You might get no's, but you never know. There might be that yes. But yeah, we're all aware of what's happening and we don't know what's gonna happen after this. But yeah, I would say I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it's a weird time for sure.
Thanks, Audra. We've actually talked a lot about side projects, so I'm glad that you're echoing me yet again for everyone on this call. Bjorn, do you have anything you want to add or?
Oh, I don't know. They nailed it right on the head. We have some great industry professionals on the phone right now. I think it's reinventing yourself, not just as a person, but as a company, because honestly, we don't know how long this is going to last for. Like, I've been 9 weeks, almost 10 weeks at home, and I'm a in the office type person. I love being in the office. I strive off of energy and some of that connectivity. And so I think right now it's really interesting because obviously digital content is important, because if we're at home, how do you connect with the consumer and create unique experiences when we're all just chilling in quarantine mode? And so I think right now it has us thinking a little bit differently, because if we were to be honest with ourselves, we don't know if like there's a COVID 20 or 21. This is COVID 19, and so we're just trying to make it through the summer. But also too, I think right now companies are rethinking. Okay, so Nike's June 1 fiscal year. Well, holy shit! What we were thinking pre-COVID is now a bit different than a couple months later. And so how do we connect with consumers? How do we connect with not even just people who are trying to buy product, but on an authentic level? And I think that's what everyone's looking for right now is a bit of vulnerability and a bit of empathy, because empathy creates connection points to real life situations to build a stronger community. And so I think right now we're going through this weird scenario where, all right, if you're a tap house down the street, if you're, a food cart, if you're a footwear industry, like everyone's thinking like, how long do we have to weather this for? And if we're a bit uncertain, how does that change the game plan? And so I think that kind of goes towards like, if you're a student, if I were a student, I would think to myself, maybe I should take a look at a couple digital courses. I don't necessarily need to be a programmer or an engineer, but I probably likely have to fine tune how do we create digital experiences if we're in this scenario right now. And man, hopefully it's just a little bit longer, but we just don't know. So I think this is a real wake up period too. I watch a lot of And we're gonna get personal here. I watch a lot of Bon Appetit. I love that show, man. I love like watching them. And so like I've been watching them go through this progression of, yeah, we're in the test kitchen in New York. This is awesome. We're making great recipes, but now we're at home and we're in like, Zoom video mode. And they're like, oh my God, how do we create a living and how do we, translate and evolve our business to this virtual reality? Some of the pain points I'm going through right now is like, how do we onboard people, globally? Like, it's not like, oh, you're going to hop into Nike on Monday. We're going through Running Start. It's like, no, we got to get VDI access. Like, I mean, it's like, it's intense and you want to create that good premium experience regardless of what company you're at. And it's very difficult right now. I had 2 people start like 2 weeks before all this happened. And I was supposed to be back in India to help onboard them. And now I've got to like do all this stuff virtually. So I think those are the challenges we're all going through right now is how do we handle this unique pandemic, but make the best out of it because we're going to come out of this good. It doesn't make it easy, but we have to like, this has now got us thinking could not be the first time or the last time this has happened. So how are we going to kind of like pivot to make the best out of this, come out ahead, but also too, like, I think we all have to like embrace one another because that's how we're all going to get out of it. And regardless of what company you work for, right now it's about, grace and, having each other's back and just getting through it. But this has all kind of changed the game for all of us because we got to think about how we're attacking, regardless of what product or company you work for. So that's my perspective. It's unique challenges. I mean, I think all of us, like all the folks that you're hearing from on the panel, like we're all going through these unique experiences that we've never been through. And so I think we're all learning. For you guys, it's an opportunity. I think challenges are opportunity. So take this as a challenge, and you guys, we're looking to you to bring fresh ideas to what we're not thinking about. And so that's the beauty of it is like, we're looking forward to you guys coming into the workforce and thinking a little bit differently on how we can all kind of tackle not just this, but like the future and what does that look like for all of us.
Thank you. Great insights. Dan, just wanted to check in with you to see if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, for sure. I think, every company right now, their strategic plan looks far different than what it looked like in February, right? So, and I think what you'll see out there is companies, communicating their areas of focus or what their strategic plans are. And I think read that, right? Because that will help you understand is what are the skill sets that those companies will need to execute against that strategic plan to get out of this mess and to create momentum once we're out of it. So, I think that's really important. I also, as I think about, our organization, right, we're talking about inventory, we're talking about e-commerce, we're talking about consumer engagement, right? So my guess is we're probably going to hire more digital product managers and footwear product managers. We're probably going to hire more site merchandisers and product merchandisers, right? So what are some of the learnings that you can take away from your program or some of the projects that you could potentially pick up? And I think be open to, even when you graduate, be open to a contract assignment, be open to an internship, right? And like I said before, be open to a role that maybe is not your dream role, the role that you thought you'd be going into coming out of this program.
Thank you so much. That concludes our questions for this evening. I want to thank all of our panelists for participating, all of our student participants, and everyone joining us via live stream this evening. We do have an upcoming event on Thursday, June 4th, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And it's the current trends in the sports and outdoor retail industry with industry expert Matt Powell. So we'd love for everyone to join us for that if and when you're available. Everyone have a fantastic night. We've ended a little bit early, so cheers. Thank you for joining us.